It's holding yourself accountable for that credibility, meaning if you're not living up to the standards that you're setting, then nobody else is going to live up to those standards at all.
They're speakers, authors, and real-life rock stars, bringing you life-changing thoughts that rock, taking conversation all the way to 11.
Most shows only go to 10.
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? These go to 11.
This is Thoughts That Rock. Now, here are your hosts, Jim Knight and Brant Menswar.
That's right. This is how we do it.
Remember when we used to sing in front of every episode?
What?
And then people complained?
We never did that.
So we stopped doing it?
That's right.
Now we just do it when we're not recording, which is
It's
weird.
Thoughts That Rock, where we talk about, I don't know, different pieces of advice people are giving. Hopefully that'll be helpful to you. We try to tackle subjects and circumstance that people might be struggling with right now. And this is one that I think today is actually incredibly helpful for people.
Yeah, it's right down the middle of the plate. And I know if you're in a leader's role at all, holding other people accountable is tough. It's not fun.
Dun, dun, dun.
It has to be done. I'm not going to lie, man. I'll tell you right out of the gate. I was more excited about my buddy being on than just the topic itself. Yeah. It's and I know, I'm not sure you guys have physically met before. You guys acted like on the show like you had never met, and maybe you haven't, but I know we've
metaphysically
talked about each other.
We've met several times in astral projection, but I don't want to get into that right now.
Yeah, that's a different episode. That's weird.
Yes.
It's my good friend that I have known for 40 years in high school, Dirk Donahue. It's a great name. Dirk and I, man, we've sort of followed each other. He was 2 years in front of me. So, you know, wherever he went to college, I went to college. We were both on music scholarships. When he was teaching in middle school, I was a substitute teacher there for a while, for 6 years. He was there a little bit longer. We worked as hosts at Olive Garden together. Like we landscaped together.
Stick, sir.
Yes. We were actually hosts. He would seat one side of the Olive Garden, I'd seat the other. It was so much fun. We both have twin daughters, which is weird. It's crazy.
It is.
But on a serious note and on a business note, this guy's amazing. He's got a killer voice. And for 28 years, he's been working at Walt Disney World with the world-renowned Voices of Liberty, one of my favorite groups. If you don't know who these guys are, it's all a cappella and sometimes 12-part harmony, and they're amazing. They perform in the American Pavilion at Epcot, if you have ever been out there. Mm-hmm. He's been a lead there, does Candlelight Processional every year. But really now he's a Dapper Dan, which is a 4-part.
He's a Dapper Dirk, if we're going to
be. He's probably never heard that before. He's a Dapper Dirk. And they perform on Main Street in Disney World at the Magic Kingdom. So if you've ever been out there or seen, I don't know, an episode of Jimmy Fallon, there's all kinds of a cappella quartets out there. He's a barbershop singer for sure. But he's also a performance director at Johnson Bible College. He's won a ton of different Disney awards, including the Legacy Award. I could go on and on. You definitely have to check out his bio. I'm just saying, I love gushing over this guy because when I'm with him, I talk about you. And when I'm with you, I talk about him. And it was cool for all of us to be on there. Bunch of laughs. But honestly, Dirk had some great meaty stuff for people to go, if I got to hold someone accountable, here are 3, I don't know if they're life-changing, but it definitely were really,
well, listen,
really
it's a touchy subject, right? It's a touchy subject, holding people accountable. Oftentimes we don't know where to start or how to approach it. We feel, we let sort of our emotions take over, and he gives some really, really great advice as to how to get the ball rolling and address this and make sure that you can hold people accountable when you need to.
Even if it's a podcast co-host.
It's time for us to transition into the show.
Let's do it. There he is. Dirk Donahue.
That's not bad. It needs to be said like that.
It does. It goes back to our old friend Don Sanderson, who used to always introduce Dirk. Even if we were just walking into a room, he'd go, ladies and gentlemen, Dirk Donahue.
I had a former, he's a friend, he's a former manager at Disney who would say, you just can't say Dirk. Your name has to go Dirk Donahue. It's like,
right.
Cher. Madonna, Dirk Donahue.
Well, we should probably get right to business. I mean, honestly, this is a how-to podcast. We're already reminiscing, man. Dirk and I, as I said in the intro, we go back now probably 40 years, high school. And, it's cool because I've been telling Brant that I've been trying to get you on the show for a long time. And the way that we changed the format and really have positioned ourselves to do a weekly free podcast now, I said, man, this is going to be great to finally have him on. So, brother, we're interested that you're actually here. And I know the topic is right up your alley because this is something that you have to do. You're managing people out at Disney and, and some other things too, even at the college, as we said in the intro. So we're talking about how to hold others accountable. And let's just, throw it over to you. What is your first thought that rocks on this topic?
All right. Well, first thought that rocks is giving appropriate correction in a very positive way. So correction meaning in the world of entertainment and music, what we would call notes, giving somebody notes after a performance. And you probably heard, I'm sure multiple people have different ways to do it. I personally call it a note sandwich because the meat of the note is the hamburger inside the sandwich. But then everything else is just garnishes onto it to add positivity to the note, which might be not tasting that great. But if the burger doesn't taste that great, but you've got some Chipotle mayo on it, it might taste a little bit better. So finding the positives
Dirk, we call that
in the
something
correction,
else.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, Brant, why are you laughing?
So French.
Yeah,
well,
that's kind of what it is.
A shite sandwich.
Hold on. I've got the bleep button right here. No worries. So, give us an example. When would you probably use that? I mean, obviously, when somebody needs some course correction, they've done something wrong. Like, how would you actually use that in practice?
Yeah, there's so many variables in performance at Disney. For instance, with the Dapper Dans, which is what I do full time now, is we have the main thing, which is the barbershop, the singing. And then there's the choreography, which is a layer on top. And then there's the timing of jokes, which is another layer. And then there's one more layer of these organ chimes that we play. So we equate it to a guy at the circus who's spinning this plate and spinning this plate and spinning this plate all at the same time. He's keeping the plate spinning while it's all the plates are spinning at the same time. Well, some of those plates might fall, so we got the note correction. You're singing this part wrong. Hey, it's just a wrong note, and it has to be corrected. But then you come in and say, "Hey, ma'am, great job with the chimes on this song. Terrific. I love the way you say this. Right here, I think you're singing a wrong part. So let's go over that real quick. But man, the way you handle the crowd on this specific, tag was terrific." So they come away with a lot of positives, but in the middle, we said, "You're singing this note wrong." Instead of just coming at them, "Hey man, you sing this part wrong," which leaves the person like, "Oh crud, I just, did all this other stuff," but that's all they're going to focus on. Yeah. So that's the old note sandwich.
Is it when you're also, I guess, as a director, like when you're out at the college, or even in a situation where you're maybe on a level playing field with the peer, maybe you don't even have any direct power or influence. As a director, I'm sure you do. How would you do that if it was somebody that was, maybe equal and level with you? Would you sort of take the same approach? Because as a director, I guess you could just go right for the middle meat and just say, you got to fix that and move on, or else you'll be taking forever to have these conversations, right?
Yeah, that's a touchy situation. Technically, because of our union, peers don't really have the authority to say, "Hey, man, you're singing this part wrong." Sometimes those people will come to the leader like me and say, "We may need to go over this part. I think, Fred is singing a wrong part." Fred, that's for you, Jim. But there's another way around it, I guess. We could just say, "Hey, can we sing that part?" Instead of saying, "Hey, Fred's singing this note wrong." As the set is over, you could go to the other leader or whoever and say, "Hey, do you mind if we sing through this I don't know if we're all, nailing this. Instead of saying, hey, Fred's singing this wrong, we need to fix this. It's, hey, let's sing through this. Something doesn't sound to me completely correct. And hopefully at that point we can figure out,
Yeah,
this guy's singing it wrong note, hey, and correct it. At the college, it's different though. At the college, when I'm in, the director, I think people find it refreshing to say, being very specific, say, altos, this note's wrong. And say it with a smile. Hey, let's get this part right. Altos will sing this. Instead of saying, somebody's just ambiguous. Somebody's singing a note wrong, and I think it's on the left side of the room. And they have long hair, and they're older. But, I think people appreciate the directness instead of being around the bush. You can still be direct and do it with kindness and knowing that it comes from, hey, we want it to be good. We want the level to be here. And right now it's not because we're singing the wrong part. But I think people appreciate directness.
I love the analogy of using a quartet, a barbershop quartet, is explaining this, because typically what happens in business is you're working on a project together and somebody sings a bad note. Everybody knows that note was wrong. Everybody knows that note was wrong, but no one wants to say shite about it, right? And that's the problem. And so what they do is they start to adjust what they're doing, what they're singing. And before you know it, you don't have one note wrong. You've got 2 notes, 3 notes, 4 notes. Now you have zero harmony because everyone's trying to move to adjust instead of just addressing it head on in a polite, nice way and go, I don't think that this is the right note. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. And there's learned behavior too. This personally happens to me all the time. Unless I'm corrected on that note, I will think that's the right note always. And then I've learned it wrong.
Yeah.
So, that's why we do it on a weekly basis. We go back to square one and we have rehearsals and we look at them and we look at the music and we sing and we memorized it. Oh, I memorized this 2 measures completely wrong. I've got the wrong notes. They work in the chord, but they're not exactly right. So that learned behavior is I've learned it wrong. And now I think it's right. And then I go back to square one and go, we can start again. So if the leader at the time is with it enough, and that's a hard part about being a leader, and that's why at Disney they pay us a little bit more, is to say, hey, you got to know all the parts. You got to be in charge of everything, know what's going on, all situations, all occasions, and be able to sing your part and cover what you're doing along with listening and watching the other guys. And it's not judging. It's just like, hey, this is the standard that our leaders have set. I have a musical leader and I have a show leader who says, okay, you say these lines like this, you perform like this. Now our musical guy says, I want this. So my job is to keep those guys happy, whether I agree or disagree with what they say. And most of the times I agree. Doesn't matter. My job is to do what my managers have asked me to do. And part of it is giving notes on this stuff and holding myself, which we can talk about later, accountable for some of this as well.
When I was putting our corporate university together at Hard Rock, one of the things that I learned, which is a little scary, is that airline pilots are off course 90% of the time. Like they get the takeoff, they get the landing.
Don't tell me that.
All the stuff in the middle.
Don't tell me that.
Crazy. But the computer or they
90
get it. It's all course correction, the whole thing, and sort of. I've equated it to, you were saying learned behavior. I love that analogy. Brant knows I talk about learned behavior quite a bit in my talks and in my book. I do think that people in general, every once in a while, just need a little bit of course correction. Some are small and minor and others are a little bit bigger. But I think your approach also is, instead of muscling their behavior, instead of managing through threats and punishment and fear, which, by the way, I'm sure there's still some people that get away with that somehow, you could totally do it in a positive way and still get the end result. If anything, even better, because I think they focus on you a little bit more. They're going to be loyal to you a little bit more. They're probably sticking around a little bit longer in the business world. So I think this is a great a great first thought. What is your second thought that rocks?
This one is knowing when to let it slide until later. So not just let it go, but let it go for a bit, get the Disney reference, let it go. And then, but come back to it when it's a better time to approach the subject. So I've been lucky enough to sing at Disney since 1995. And we have 1-year contracts. And so I've had 28 1-year contracts, been very lucky. There's not a ton of us around that have that. So I'm at a point in my career where I'm just near the end of the twilight of my Disney career. But through the years, especially the very, very beginning of it, we're learning so much music and there's so many levels to it. And I thought I was a pretty good performer. must have been pretty good to get into the group that I got into, was the Voices of Liberty at Epcot. And a guy side note, a guy got into the group. He left grad school and got hired. And his mom's like, "What are you doing? You're leaving grad school to go sing at Disney?" And she says to him, and his response was, "This is like a basketball player making the NBA. That's the quality." So just to be in the group, and Jim knows, he and I had been fans of them since Epcot opened. It was a big deal for me to get in that group. And then I got in there, and I felt maybe for like 2 years I was an awful singer, an awful performer, just because I was constantly learning music and getting it wrong and being corrected. So this point that rocks, the second one, is kind of tailing off that, meaning that somebody who's still learning and still trying to navigate their way, sometimes you don't just pile on. It can't be, it's a day where it's, man, I've given this guy a note after every set. At some point I need to go, okay, in the grand scheme of things, I can let this go because it may happen again, or maybe he'll correct it. If it's just singing a little flat on this note, it's fine. Maybe it was just a one-time anomaly. If it's a reoccurring thing, okay, we can fix it. But piling on is not going to help the situation. It's my job, but I can wait till later and say, "Hey, man, 2 days later, and we can figure this out at a different time." If the person is willing to, just is really kind of goes with the flow, then it's okay to pile on. But most of the time, you got to be sensitive to the person. Individuals are different. Each individual person has their how much they can take as far as that stuff goes. And so if the person is filled to the brim with notes and they're ready to bust, now is not the time to do it. Later is the time to do it. Doesn't mean it gets slid completely, but it can wait till later.
I love the analogy there too, Jim. It's one of these things that so as also a singer of different style and type, Dirk, it is one that as you know, sliding into a note is not a good thing unless it's a planned thing.
Yeah.
Unless it's,
and we do a lot of that in barbershop. Yeah. We do a lot of slides in barbershop.
Yeah. If it's written that way, that's great. If it's because you're under the pitch and you're trying to find it, and you eventually hit it. That's what I love about this analogy, is that it's not stop singing, right? It's not sing the wrong note. It's slide until you get to the right place. And I think that is a great analogy as well with this. You're not going to stop what's happening, but you're going to let it slide until you can get to that right place. But you got to get to that right place. You can't just let it go, or there's never going to be that course correction we talked about in the first point.
Agree.
Yeah. I love this thought as well. And mine, and I've used this in my career from a different perspective. Mine was, when I was at Hard Rock, I was just a host. I was seating tables. To go from being a staff member to being a manager is a monumental leap. And I wasn't really a supervisor. There wasn't a real gap. It's one day you're seating people's tables, and then the next day you're holding people accountable. And that's a tough thing, especially in that environment with some pretty, I would say, irreverent, pretty unpredictable, unique people. Some of the most unique people I've ever seen on the planet. And now all of a sudden I gotta write people up or whatever. It was so weird. So I made a cognizant decision when I was going through my management training to do this exact thing that you just said, Dirk. I said, I am purposefully going to not write anybody up, counsel them, anything for 6 months. I said, I'm just going to be a sponge. I'm going to soak it up. I'm going to see some stuff that I probably was doing. You know, people weren't supposed to be eating a hamburger in the side station where the guests could see them, but I used to do it too. So I was like, if I saw anything, I would let it slide. But then at some point, as I got closer to the 6 months, I would sort of start using some very non-threatening language. I'd be like, "Come on, man, you're gonna get me in trouble. You got, you know, you're not supposed to be chewing gum. Just be careful, man." So then at some point, the 7th, 8th month, now it's like, dude, you put me in a corner. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's not right. Remember that time I let you slide? Now, unfortunately, I have to write you up or I have to document it or whatever. But what I got from that again was that at least this bracket of time where there was some loyalty, there was some credibility. You know, people were okay with me now holding them accountable because they remember this guy. You know, he was one of us, but he also let me slide for a while. So for me, it was that jump from being an hourly paid employee to being a leader, which was a big leap in that business.
Oh, absolutely. You can imagine the same sort of thing being just a singer, and then all of a sudden you're in charge of singers.
Yep. Exactly.
And getting back to that first one, I mean, the note sandwich and this, the voice, your performance, voice, acting, singing, all that stuff is even more personal. It's you. A lot of people, specifically performers, are defined by their voice or their performance or the way they act, and now you're criticizing that, and it's really, really, sometimes it's very, very hard to take. And we call it TTFN, and I won't use a colorful metaphor, but it's take the freaking note. TTFN.
I thought it was ta-ta for now.
Yeah, it does mean that. But yes.
Mary Poppins, maybe.
Yes, ta-ta for now. Yes. You've obviously been to the Hollywood. You've been to MGM Studios back in the day when TTFN. But yeah, it's slightly different. But take the freaking note. Somebody gives you a note, and it's like, but it's just take the note. And it's hard to do. So if you're taking notes all day long, you're just getting beat down. It's just not as fun. So knowing when to let it slide, and I like the way you thought of that, Brant, that it slides to a note. Let it slide because you'll eventually need to get back to that major chord or that barbershop 7 chord.
You know the barbershop 7.
Yeah, we used to.
Yeah,
exactly.
A dominant 7 chord.
I used to work with banding people together, Jim and I both, and it was this scenario that Alan Schaefer, our good buddy who is the founder and CEO there, I used to tell him all the time that he was for Christmas I was going to send him a dream catcher with a knife in the middle of it because he was my dream killer, and it was it's true though, but we laugh about it now. But the reason that I felt that way is because he was giving me notes while we were basically still singing, right? Like, can we get to the point where, but as in the moment is not the moment to give me the note, let the dream fly.
Yeah. That's actually, that's another way to say, let it slide. I don't need to be telling the guy on set, like, look, I had a guy, I was singing in another group, at the Hollywood Studios, and a buddy of mine tells a story of this guy looking at him and going, "You're singing on set in front of everybody." And I mean, okay, I get it, but you can't let that slide till after you walk off set. Or we have technicians who are who watch us when we sing. We're mic'd up now, which was different from the 70s and 80s and 90s. The Dappers are fully mic'd, which is really great. But we have techs who are there, and we're walking off set and we're still on stage. If you know the lingo of Disney, we're still on stage. As we get backstage, we're playing on the way off. We have this playoff that we play with our chimes, and a tech is trying to talk to me. Hey, did you like the sound? I'm like, let's wait till we get backstage and let that slide until later. People, just correction in the moment is not.
Yeah.
This is not the way to do. It's hard to refrain from doing that when you like, come on, sing that sharper, just a little higher, or wow, something's not right, and you make a face, but we can let that slide until later.
So I was saying this in the introduction about certainly the things that I've done with you. I know Dirk is a couple of years older than I am, so I sort of followed him in a lot of places. And I remember the year that you tried out for the Voices of Liberty. Again, just as a side note, it was one of the most awesome opportunities because they're right here in our backyard. And I love the voices and also the Dapper Dans. But the year after you got in, I went out there and auditioned myself. It was hilarious because they lined you up at that time. And I just remember I prepared like 2 songs and I was like, tonight, thank you very much. It was like 1 or 2 measures and I was out. Like I did not have whatever Disney sound they were looking for. And I was a music major and I was like, I thought I at least would have a little bit longer, but I have said this before, just watching you not only perform out there, but also directing out at Johnson, University. You do have 2 very different styles, which are very interesting. But I can see both of these notes that you've given us so far, at least both of the thoughts, have manifest themselves in whatever job you're doing. So I can honestly say you do live out these things about holding others accountable.
Well, I try. The Disney in the Johnson are completely different animals, and teaching at the college level is way different than singing with. I can be a little bit more direct with the students and the adults in my community choir out at the college, and but it's still taken the same way. It's still taken the same way, but it's a completely different approach for sure.
All right, man, bring us home. Give us your third and final thought that rocks on this topic.
This may be the most important one just for the credibility purposes of the last tag of it, but it's holding yourself accountable for that credibility. Meaning, if you're not living up to the standards that you're setting, then nobody else is going to live up to those standards at all. I started in '95 in the Voice of Liberty, so it was the fall. Within 6 months, between 6 months into a year, I was asked to be a sub lead. So now I was not 21, 22. I was 29 when I got hired there. And I had some choral conducting background, as Jim may have said, that he and I both worked together in a middle school setting, and I was the choir director at a middle school for a number of years. So I had a little bit of gravitas, we'll say, within music, but I didn't have any as far as Disney goes, but they saw something in me that they said, hey, we want you to just be a sub lead, meaning conduct the group, give vocal feedback and things like that, and say speeches during the shows, which is a big deal. And when I first started, I was so intimidated by the people that had been there. I was brand new, but here I am giving notes to people that had already been there since 1982 and 83. And so how do I manage through? And I just decided I was going to be fair and do the right thing. And if something needed to be said, it would need to be said. Now, one of the great things I think, and it could be taken either way, but there's an old saying, give correction, and give positive feedback or give positive responses in the light of day or in the public, and then give correction in private. And there's a lot that can be said for that. That can go a long way too. But for credibility purpose for other people, that doesn't always fly. Those other people need to see that that something was wrong and that it can be fixed. If you're giving somebody correction in the private all the time, the other people don't see that, and unless you're giving them correction, obviously. But for a group of people, if they never see you out in front and saying, hey, let's fix that, or let's fix this, or this is great, check on this. If they just see, hey, that's great, everybody, and then you talk to a person off to the side, they don't see you coaching that person, then they're not catching the full spectrum of what your knowledge is on the subject. And your credibility may come down a bit, if that makes sense.
What happens if you never hear any positive and all you're doing is getting corrective language from like a co-host all day long? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, sorry. Maybe I said too much. Yeah.
Should I leave? It sounds like you guys need to do this in private.
Raise your game. Raise your game.
It's me. It's not you.
Oh, boy.
That's what you're saying.
Hey, I invented it's me. It's not you. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
And then you're beat down all the time, and you're just felt like I did for the first couple of years. I was like, I'm just awful. I can't get anything right.
So Brant, in your world, I mean, I know you've worked in sales position, collection agency. You know, you've done some stuff a long time ago before you went on the road. But honestly, from your 25 years traveling and being in the band, I mean, is this still sort of applicable? How does this maybe fit to you? And I'm just trying to think of other people in our audience. How do you hold yourself accountable so that you can get that credibility before you really start holding others accountable?
So I'll say this: it's different in a band. Because you know, you spend this isn't a job where you're in the office and you go home. This is you're on the road, you're with each other every second of every day. And that's a different dynamic. When you're at Waffle House at 2 a.m. ready to kill each other because somebody didn't play the right note over and over and over again. So that's a different dynamic. But
then it really becomes Awful House.
It really, right? What I would say is, I think the best way to earn credibility is to own up to your mistake before somebody points it out. You know, if you know you made a mistake, you know, I'd say to them, guys, look, I know I muffed that so bad. It's my bad. I'll make sure that I get it better on that next time. But like owning up to it before somebody has to point it out,
I like that.
just shows that I'm not perfect. I don't expect anybody to be perfect. I'm willing to admit that I still have work to do. And I'm willing to do the work. And I think that that's the difference and how bands stay together, to be honest with you. If it's given in that negative light, in the what's the matter with you, you stupid, how many times are you going to play that note wrong? Bands don't make it very long on the road that way. But I think if you look at some of the historical bands that have been able to not just stay together for 30, 40 years, but to still make music, new music 30 or 40 years later. They're bands who have learned to do that, right? They learn to admit their mistakes, to bring it in and learn how to apologize and mean it with sincerity. I think are the ones that have that longevity, as opposed to the really talented, you know, and that this is part of what I think is tough, even Dirk, with someone like you in a situation. You might have someone who is an incredibly talented singer, like just the best tone, the best pitch. I mean, they're incredible. Their presence is incredible. But if their behavior is really volatile and they're not a team player, then it doesn't matter how good they are, because they're actually making everybody else worse, right?
You know, we have a saying, it's the hang is important. It's especially at Disney when, so I'm paid 10 hours a day we do 4 10-hour days. I'll use Dapper's as a specific thing. We do 8 20-minute sets. That does not equal 10 hours. So there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of time that there's the hang. And if the hang is bad with someone, doesn't matter how awesome they are, an incredible singer they are, it just breeds contempt and doesn't just like bands, like Jim and I just saw They Might Be Giants, and they've been around since the early 80s. And those
Mhm.
two guys, John and John, are best buds. And they just, you can tell they love hanging out with each other. And I saw a rehearsal video with them, and they just are directed with each other. They're not mean. They're saying, no, it's not that chord, it's this chord. Oh. And they just have this dynamic with each other that works well. If it doesn't, if the hang is not good, then it's going to bleed onto the stage, and the audience can tell. They might be singing the right notes, playing all the right notes, doing all the right lines, but you can tell that group with another group who really, really gets along. They're buds. They have a blast backstage that will seep onto the stage, and it just makes for a better show. For some reason, you go, there's something about those guys. There's something I can't put my finger on, but I like this performance better. That whole credibility thing, as we get back to this specific thought, I was thinking about this also, that the way the leader reacts to his leaders also will lend to the credibility of him or she, the leader, giving feedback to the people that they are above. If I can't take a note, then why am I surprised that the person I'm giving notes to can't take a note? If I can't TTFN, why can't this person? Then this is why this person can't TTFN. So, and it's a tough pill to swallow. It really is. You're thinking, hey, man, I'm just killing this. I'm doing great. This is great. And then you're told, no, you need to fix this, blah, blah, blah. And you just, thank you. Okay, great. Okay, cool. Instead of coming back, well, but it's a hard pill to swallow. It really is. It's a sour note.
The longer you let it go, and the longer they sing the note wrong, the worse it actually hurts them when they finally correct it, because they're like, why didn't you tell me the first 12 times I sang it wrong? And why are you telling me now? It actually makes the situation more volatile at that point.
And, at some point, and then another layer to the credibility is saying, sorry, man, I should have given you this note before. I didn't hear it until now. And you may have been doing this wrong the whole time. That's my bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I got that wrong, but I just heard that. And I think that is just being honest like that, saying, hey, not everybody's perfect, and I've been shanking. I didn't hear you doing that. So sorry about that. I wish I'd have caught that sooner.
I think Dirk explained my and Brant's relationship to a T. I mean, I remember I said this just a couple of weeks ago, Brant. I said, you and I have never really gotten to a, drop down, drag out, I want to punch you in the face moment. We've disagreed about some stuff. Maybe I can remember kind of an argument or two, but I've known you for 12, 13 years. We've been in business. We've got multiple businesses together for at least half that amount of time. We laugh our butts off all day long, but there are times where, you and I will hold each other accountable, whether it's, this is how you made me feel, or this is what's going on, or, hey, we need to talk about this. I don't feel like we've drugged stuff out. I feel like we nip it in the bud. And I think our credibility is we can talk about anything and get past it, and then us go and have a bucket of meat and go get our feet massaged or whatever it is we're going to do after work, which actually does happen. I don't want people to freak out, but that's a real thing.
Wait. The foot massages. Different. Are you giving each other foot massages?
Totally different podcast.
No, and it's not the same place. It's not Joe's bucket of meat and foot massage. It's a different
Although
places.
that would be awesome. Let's just be honest here.
That's a great, let's think about that.
I think,
there is a barbecue place in Alabama. I'm not even kidding. There's a barbecue place in Alabama that is barbecue and foot massage. It's disgusting.
Road trip.
I'm just telling you.
Let's go. I think my point was, we're two individuals, and then a couple of our businesses, we do have people that are contractors that are working with us. And we probably do have to hold some of them accountable, but even on a level playing field as co-founders of a business, I think we hold each other for that credibility. But again, I think this is such a smart way, Dirk, to go about, whether it's business or any type of club or whatever. I just think people look at you differently when you can hold yourself accountable. And I remember I probably was a pretty, boring trainer. I am, for the most part, a by the books type of guy. I've been like that before Hard Rock. When I worked for my dad, I remember he put me in charge of an office, and I was just one of the guys one week. And next thing you know, I'm running the office. I had to let people go. I had to hold them accountable. But the ones that stayed there that were worth their weight in salt saw me differently because they remember how I was being fair to people. But I had already towed the line for a year or two. I think even Dirk with your brother Todd, I mean, I feel like I was a by the book type of guy and got things done. And he was appreciative of that versus cutting corners or doing things a different way. So I know this could easily branch out. We could talk about a lot of things, but I do think this one probably is the most important. If you can hold yourself accountable and do the things and not have people see you sliding and taking the corners or cheating or trying to do whatever on the side, boy, that does build that credibility, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're held at a level, then you need to hold yourself at that level so that you can have that credibility. I mean, and then it just goes so far. It goes such a long way when you have that credibility. People trust you, and you're not going to get the pushback if they trust. You still may get pushback, but I think it's just for the health of the organization. It just leads to more trust, and that's what you really want in somebody that you can trust. And if they can't trust you, man, they're not gonna. It's just like, what's his name? The coach of Alabama, Nick Saban, is. He's a hard driving guy, but those guys know where they stand, and they trust him. And he could scream his face off at them, that they still will run through the wall for him. Mm-hmm. And because they know the product that he has put out, and his credibility is really, really high. And I don't think he's afraid, for instance, that one championship game where he pulled Jalen Hurts. I don't know if you remember this. He pulled him and put in Tua, and they won the game with Tua. And now both of those guys are in the NFL, and Jalen Hurts, who was pulled, just won a Super Bowl. Am I right? They won, right? I'm not losing my mind. Philadelphia Eagles, right?
No, I think they lost. But still,
Kansas City won. Yeah.
Kansas City. No, he got to the Super Bowl. That's it. Oh,
that's right.
It'd have been so much a better story if I'd have known what I was talking about.
Miserably, but no, I'm just kidding.
He fails again. Yeah. You both went.
I was trying to think. I'm like,
he's wrong.
Did you get a T-shirt in a third world country that said that the Eagles won? Because
they printed it so early. Dewey wins. Dewey wins the presidency. Yeah, but you get the gist that he went on to succeed, and he had the gumption to say, I'm putting this guy in, and the team trusted him to know what he was doing.
Totally.
Well, this was a great topic, man. How to hold others accountable. And the three that I wrote down were, giving appropriate correction in a positive way, sort of the note sandwich that you said, knowing when to let it slide, but still address it later. And then holding yourself accountable, where that's really where you get that credibility if you're going to hold others accountable. And I think this is great, man. I think, you're talking about it from a performance standpoint, and we went a bunch of different directions. So again, I think people listening, whether it's personal or business, there's certainly a way that you can use all of these. They're brilliant. And man, we're just so happy that you were able to stop by. Where can people find out a little bit more about you or some of the things that you're working on? Where should we send people?
You can go to I have a personal website, AdonaiMusicStudio.com, one word, Adonai. And if you know Hebrew, that's Lord, ADONAI, musicstudio.com. And then you could shoot me an email from there, or you could come see the Dapper Dans of Main Street, USA at the Magic Kingdom. And I'm there Sundays through Wednesdays, and we always make it a point, which is a great thing. The Voices did it, and the Dappers do, is to chat with the guests afterwards. That personal contact is just such a great thing. They see you perform, and then you can actually talk to them and get personal with them. And we have a lot of returning guests. So I'd love to meet you on Main Street, USA. And if not, check us out at AdonaiMusicStudio.com we do online music lessons and I'm one of the teachers of that. So I teach voice. So
Cool.
love to hear from you.
Brant, at some point, I got to get you to one of Dirk's parties where, everybody there is a performer. So you wind up later on in the night. There's a cappella singing everywhere.
New Year's Eve, man.
Yes.
I mean, Christmas Eve.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, Christmas Eve. Come
man,
by.
I love you. I know we've known each other forever. And
Love you too, man.
I'm just really thankful that we had a chance. I know you have a couple other topics up your sleeve, and hopefully we'll have you back on the show somewhere down the road. But we're honored, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks. It's my pleasure. Love you, Jim. Brant, good to see you. Thanks, guys.
Talk to you soon. Hey, rock stars. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and listen, we know how busy you are, and grabbing those little nuggets of wisdom that can amp up your life are super hard to come by. So we hope this episode helped you enough for you to maybe subscribe and consider leaving us a rating and a review so that we can continue to grow the show.
Thus That Rock is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network and also supports Cannonball Kids Cancer and their fight for finding and funding treatment options for kids who have run out of options. They're amazing. Their work is incredible. To learn more, please go to cannonballkidscancer.org.
Finally, if you're interested in having Brant or Jim or both of us speak at your event, whether as a virtual webinar or an in-person conference keynote or mastermind, contact us directly at thoughtsetrock.com.
Until next time,
Rock on!